Hit subscribe before the truth gets buried with the lies, because this one starts with a diary that should never have been found. It was a quiet street in rural Vermont, lined with maples and perfect lawns, the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But on a cold March morning in 2017, police arrived at 42 Maple Ridge Drive, after a neighbor reported a strange smell coming from the basement window of the Hawthorne residence. Inside, everything was pristine. Coffee still warm on the counter, TV playing a morning show on mute. But in the basement, officers found something that would turn a small-town disappearance into one of the most disturbing cases in state history. Wrapped neatly in plastic and duct tape under a layer of insulation was a human body. The victim was identified as Rachel Hawthorne, 34 years old, a local high school guidance counselor and mother of two. She'd been reported missing 3 days earlier by her husband, Mark Hawthorne, who told police she'd gone out for a jog and never returned. At first glance, Mark looked like the perfect husband, an accountant, mild-mannered, church-going, always polite. But the basement of his home told a different story. Rachel's body showed no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Her wedding ring was missing, and beside her, detectives found something odd. A small, red, leather-bound diary, placed gently on a wooden crate as if it had been meant to be found. Detective Laura Keating, lead investigator on the case, flipped through the diary at the scene. It wasn't Rachel's. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, and every entry began with, "Dear R." At first, Keating assumed it was a love letter from Mark, but the tone was wrong. "You said you'd never tell him. You promised, but I see the way he looks at you. The guilt in your eyes when you come home. You can't keep both of us forever." Every entry grew darker, angrier, more possessive. And the final one was dated just 2 days before Rachel disappeared. "If I can't have you, no one can. You know what happens next." When confronted, Mark claimed he had no idea who the diary belonged to. "Rachel had her students write personal journals for therapy," he said shakily. "Maybe it's one of theirs." But forensic testing told a different story. The DNA on the diary didn't belong to any student. It belonged to a woman named Claire Donovan, a former nurse from Burlington, who had gone missing in 2014. The discovery stunned investigators. Claire had vanished under eerily similar circumstances, leaving behind a husband who swore she'd run off after an argument. No body, no suspect, no closure. But now, her DNA was found in a house 60 miles away, in the basement of another missing woman. Detective Keating's team started digging into Mark's background. On the surface, he was clean. No criminal record, no financial troubles. But his online presence was almost non-existent. No social media, no old photos, no digital footprint before 2013. A DMV photo, a tax record, a marriage certificate, all issued within the same year. Before that, nothing. When Keating ordered a deeper federal search, the results came back chilling. Mark Hawthorne didn't exist before 2013. There was no birth certificate, no college record, no social security registration. The identity had been manufactured. Whoever he was, he'd built an entire life from scratch, and Rachel had no idea. Neighbors described the couple as picture perfect. They hosted barbecues, volunteered at church, took their kids to soccer. But one neighbor, Ellen Brooks, mentioned something odd when interviewed. She said, "Sometimes I'd see Rachel sitting alone in her car at night, lights off, just crying." Once she told me, "You ever feel like the person you love isn't who you think they are?" Keating noted that line down carefully. As the investigation deepened, detectives uncovered that Rachel had been renting a private mailbox at a shipping center under her maiden name. Inside, they found several letters, all addressed to R, from someone calling themselves A. Each letter was handwritten, romantic at first, then paranoid. The writer accused Rachel of lying, of hiding their relationship. "You said you'd leave him. Why are you still there? I saw you at church. You looked happy. You're not supposed to look happy." Digital forensics traced the letter's postage to a nearby town called Northfield. Security footage from the post office showed a woman, blonde, mid-30s, mailing envelopes. The image was grainy, but one of the texts recognized her face from a missing person database. Claire Donovan. She had been declared legally dead 3 years earlier. The realization hit Keating hard. The diary in the basement wasn't just evidence, it was a breadcrumb trail left by someone who was supposed to be dead. Either someone was using Claire Donovan's name to torment Rachel, or Claire Donovan had come back. Meanwhile, the autopsy revealed something disturbing. Rachel hadn't been killed in the basement. She'd been sedated, suffocated, then placed there after death. No signs of restraint, no sign of a struggle. The killer had been someone she trusted, someone she'd let get close. And in the attic, behind a loose panel, investigators found a small metal lockbox. Inside, a burner phone, $5,000 in cash, and 2 passports, one for Mark Hawthorne and one for Andrew Donovan. The photograph on both IDs was the same. Mark Hawthorne was Andrew Donovan, husband of missing woman Claire Donovan. The case exploded across national headlines. Husband living double life, 2 wives dead. News outlets swarmed the small Vermont town, painting Mark as a sociopath who'd reinvented himself after killing his first wife. But Detective Keating wasn't convinced it was that simple. Something about the diary's tone bothered her. It wasn't written by a killer. It was written by someone scared, jealous, desperate to be believed. She requested another handwriting analysis, comparing the diary entries to Rachel's own journals recovered from her work computer. The result came back 3 days later. The diary wasn't written by Claire Donovan. It was written by Rachel Hawthorne herself. The revelation flipped the case on its head. Rachel had written every entry. The jealous lover, the threats, the confessions. All of it was written by her. But why? Had she fabricated a stalker? Was she planning to frame her husband? Or was she documenting a mental breakdown born from guilt? Keating reopened Rachel's messages, digging deeper into the weeks before her death. That's when she found something. A series of deleted emails recovered from the hard drive. Each email was sent from an anonymous address, short, cryptic, and chillingly direct. "He knows who you are. You can't hide this time. The diary won't save you." The last message was sent at 11:23 p.m. the night Rachel disappeared. It came from an IP address registered to Burlington Medical Center, the same hospital where Claire Donovan used to work before she vanished. And attached to that email was a single photo. A grainy image of Rachel, sitting in her car, taken from just outside her driver's side window.
Detective Laura Keating didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dim glow of her office, the flicker of her monitor painting her face in blue light. The photo recovered from Rachel Hawthorne's inbox stared back at her. Rachel, frozen mid-turn, eyes wide, her reflection caught in the car window. Whoever took it had been standing close enough to touch the glass. The timestamp read March 14, 11:22 p.m., less than 20 minutes before Rachel's phone went offline. The IP address led to Burlington Medical Center, but surveillance footage from the hospital showed nothing unusual. No sign-ins, no suspicious activity. Yet one name in the staff directory jumped out at Keating. A temporary nurse listed under an alias, recently hired through a private staffing agency. The alias, Clara Denham. The birth date, partial address, and signature didn't match any legal identity, but the photo ID attached to the file made Keating's heart freeze. It was Claire Donovan. The missing woman, legally dead for 3 years, was working under a new name less than 30 miles from where Rachel had been found? Within hours, a task force assembled. The hospital staff were questioned. No one remembered Clara Denham ever speaking much. She worked overnight shifts, avoided cameras, and left abruptly after March 14, the night Rachel disappeared. When investigators traced the paycheck trail, they found a bank account under the alias C. Denham. Withdrawals showed a pattern. Every transaction ended with the same transfer destination, a small-town bank in Rochester, New Hampshire. Keating knew what that meant. Claire Donovan wasn't dead. She was hiding. 2 days later, Keating and her partner, Detective Kyle Mendoza, drove through the dense pines of New Hampshire, following the bank's location to a shabby apartment complex behind a mechanic shop. Apartment 2B. No lights, no sound. Keating knocked gently. "Claire Donovan? It's Detective Keating, Vermont State Police. We need to talk." No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Then, faintly, a creak of movement. "Claire, I know you're in there. You're not in trouble. We just need to know what happened to Rachel Hawthorne." For a long moment, silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened just an inch. A woman's voice whispered from the darkness. "He found her, didn't he?" Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and old coffee. Piles of notebooks and photo envelopes covered the floor. The woman sitting on the couch looked frail, ghost-pale, eyes sunken but alert. It was her, Claire Donovan. She clutched a folded envelope, knuckles white, voice trembling. "I knew it wouldn't stop with me." Keating sat across from her. "Claire, you were reported dead in 2014. Why disappear?" Claire's hands shook as she set down the envelope. "Because I was never supposed to exist. Neither was Rachel." Keating frowned. "What do you mean?" Claire looked up. "We both loved the same man, and that man wasn't Mark Hawthorne. His real name was Andrew Donovan, my husband." The room fell silent. Claire explained everything in slow, shattering fragments. After she and Andrew married in 2010, their relationship spiraled. He was charming, intelligent, but possessive, controlling. When she discovered he'd stolen money from her hospital's research fund, she confronted him. Days later, she vanished, or so everyone believed. But in truth, she had survived an accident Andrew had staged, a crash off a mountain road. The car burned, the body inside, unrecognizable. He'd replaced her with a stolen corpse from the hospital morgue. Claire escaped and went into hiding. She assumed new identities, moved states, kept her head down. She thought she was safe until 2 years later, she found Andrew again. He had a new name, a new wife, a new life. Rachel Hawthorne. Claire tried to warn Rachel anonymously. Letters, emails, even the diary that she'd sent in secret, written from memory to document the abuse she had endured. But Rachel didn't believe her. "She thought I was some jealous ghost. She told me to stop contacting her, that she loved him." Keating's throat tightened. "So you stopped writing?" Claire shook her head slowly. "I tried, but I couldn't. I saw him watching her. I saw her become me." Keating pressed gently. "You saw him watching her?" Claire nodded. "He knew I was still alive. He'd been tracking me since the day I ran." She reached for the envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were photos. Printed surveillance images showing Andrew, Mark Hawthorne, standing across from Rachel's school, sitting in his car, waiting. The last photo showed him staring straight at the camera. "I think," she whispered, "he wanted me to see him." Keating exhaled slowly, pulse pounding. "Where is he now?" Claire looked terrified. I don't know. He doesn't make mistakes. If Rachel's gone, it means he started over again. That was when Mendoza, who'd been scanning the apartment, called out, "Detective, you need to see this." He stood by a cluttered desk littered with printed email headers. One caught Keating's eye immediately. It was the same anonymous address that sent Rachel the final message. The diary won't save you. And the sender's IP? Not from Burlington, not from any hospital. It came from a Vermont State Police terminal. Someone inside the department had sent Rachel the message. The realization hit like a wave. Someone on the inside had known about the diary, had known where to find Rachel. Keating's mind raced. There were only 3 people in the department with clearance to that terminal: herself, the captain, and her partner. She turned slowly toward Mendoza. He stood by the window, back turned, silent. "Mendoza," she said carefully, "how long have you known about this email trail?" He didn't move. "Answer me." When he finally turned, his face was unreadable. "Long enough. But not the way you think." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black recorder. "She was supposed to go to the FBI. She told me about the diary, about Claire, about Andrew." Keating's stomach twisted. "Rachel came to you?" He nodded. 3 days before she died. According to Mendoza, Rachel had grown suspicious of her husband months before. She'd found inconsistencies, work trips that didn't exist, credit card charges from hotels in other names. When she confronted him, he told her she was paranoid. So she started documenting everything in her own diary, including the letters she'd been receiving. But when she brought that diary to Mendoza, she asked him to keep one thing hidden. She said if anything happened to her, the diary would explain everything. She was terrified. She told me someone was watching her. Keating's voice was sharp now. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Mendoza hesitated. "Because I thought she was lying. I thought she was trying to frame her husband. I didn't believe her until I saw what she'd written." Keating stared at him, fury and disbelief twisting inside her. "You had the diary?" He looked at the floor. "I still do." He reached into his bag and placed a small leather-bound notebook on the table. The same red cover, the same faint scratch across the spine. But this one was different. The handwriting was Rachel's, and the last entry, written hours before her death, stopped Keating cold. "If I disappear, don't believe what they say. Mark isn't the only one living a lie. Someone else knows the truth. Someone inside the department." Keating's hands trembled as she looked at Mendoza. But before she could speak, Claire's eyes widened in terror. From the hallway outside came the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. And then a man's voice. "Laura, I told you to stop digging." Keating froze. It was her captain's voice.
The sound of boots echoed down the hall. Detective Laura Keating froze, her pulse pounding as the captain's shadow appeared in the thin beam of light spilling through the cracked door. "Laura." Captain Grant Heller's voice was calm, but that calm carried a weight, the kind that came from someone used to being obeyed. "Step away from her." Mendoza's hand went to his sidearm, but Keating shook her head. They were boxed in. One way in, one way out. Claire Donovan sat trembling on the couch, eyes darting between them. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He's been covering for Andrew for years." Keating's mind raced. "Grant," she said slowly, "put the gun down." He stepped forward, flashlight cutting through the dark. "You should have stopped when I told you to," he said. "You think I didn't know what Rachel was planning? You think I didn't know about Claire?" Keating's voice hardened. "Then tell me, what did you do to her?" He laughed softly. "To her, nothing. She was already gone long before I got involved. You have no idea who you're chasing, Laura. None of you do." Then he nodded toward Mendoza. "Ask your partner." The silence was suffocating. Mendoza didn't move. His hand trembled near his holster. Keating turned. "Kyle, what is he talking about?" Mendoza's eyes flicked toward her, then dropped to the floor. "I told you, Rachel came to me, but I didn't tell you everything." Keating's stomach sank. "What didn't you tell me?" "She wasn't just scared of Mark," Mendoza said. "She was scared of someone inside the department, someone who'd been protecting him since before she even met him." Captain Heller's voice cut through the tension. "Enough!" But Mendoza kept going. "She found files on a shared network drive, case archives, dozens of missing persons, all connected by one thing: Andrew Donovan's fingerprints. She realized the system was rigged. Every time his name came up, reports were closed, evidence deleted, records lost." Keating's voice broke through the static of disbelief. "That's impossible." Mendoza met her eyes. It was him, the captain. He's been cleaning Andrew's trail for years. Heller stepped forward, gun raised now. "You think I did this for him? You think I care about Andrew Donovan?" His face twisted. "You don't get it. Andrew doesn't exist. Not anymore." Keating stared at him, trying to make sense of it. "What do you mean?" "He's not a man, Laura. He's an identity. One of dozens. Every time one dies, another is born. New papers, new name, new town." Heller's tone shifted, almost proud. "And I helped build it. Because we needed him. People like him keep the machine turning. Witnesses disappear, problems vanish, stories die quiet." Claire gasped, tears streaming down her face. "You're lying. He killed people." Heller looked her coldly. "And you helped him. Every time you ran, every time you hid, you gave him cover. You both played your parts." Keating shook her head. "Why Rachel? Why her?" "Because she figured it out," Heller said simply. "She wasn't supposed to. She found his real name, the one before Andrew Donovan." He leaned in close. "You want to know who he really was?" Before anyone could react, the door burst open, a flash of light, a gunshot. The sound was deafening in the small apartment. Heller dropped. A red bloom spread across his shirt. Mendoza stood behind him, gun smoking in his hand. The silence that followed was unbearable, only the faint hum of traffic outside. Keating's voice came out in a whisper. "You just killed the captain." Mendoza's jaw tightened. He wasn't going to stop. He was about to say a name. "You heard him?" Keating nodded. "He said Andrew Donovan wasn't real, that it was an identity." Claire stood slowly, her hands shaking. "He's still out there, Detective. I've seen him. I saw him 2 weeks ago outside Rachel's school." Keating frowned. "You're sure?" She nodded. "He hasn't changed his face. He just changed his name again." The investigation spiraled overnight. Heller's death triggered a federal review. Files sealed for years were reopened. Keating spent sleepless nights combing through data. Missing persons, fraudulent passports, shell companies. Every trail led to the same dead end. Every alias Andrew Donovan used was built from the bones of another identity, stolen from missing men across 4 states. But one alias stood out, a recent one, registered 6 months before Rachel's murder. Name: David Keating. Occupation: freelance security consultant. Spouse: Laura Keating. The detective's breath caught in her throat. The screen blurred, her fingers went numb. It was her name. Her identity had been cloned, repurposed, used to create the cover for another ghost. And attached to the fake marriage certificate was a familiar signature: Mark Hawthorne. It all crashed down in that moment. Every case file, every unanswered question. He hadn't been hiding from her. He'd been right behind her, the entire time, watching, waiting. She ran her hand across the cold surface of her desk, realizing something else. Every password, every login she had used during the investigation had been compromised. Someone had been reading her notes in real time. That night, she drove home to her empty house on the outskirts of Montpelier. She didn't bother turning on the lights. The place felt foreign now, too still, too quiet. On the kitchen counter sat a single manila envelope. No postage, no fingerprints. Inside was a Polaroid. Her, sitting at her desk, reading the fake identity file. On the back, written in the same block handwriting Rachel had found months before. "You're looking in the wrong direction. It's not about who I am, it's about who made me." A week later, the FBI closed the case. Official report: primary suspect deceased, accomplice presumed missing. The press moved on. The headlines faded. But Detective Keating didn't stop. She couldn't. Every night she revisited the evidence, the diaries, the emails, the phone records, and every time she thought she was close, the data would vanish. Files erased, backups corrupted. Someone was still cleaning the trail. Then one morning she woke to a notification on her phone. A new note had been added to her private drive. No sender, no metadata. The title: The Diary, Final Entry. The note contained only a single line: "We all write our own confessions eventually." And attached, a video file. Grainy, faint static. It showed a man sitting in a dark room, face obscured, his voice calm, familiar, deliberate. "Hello, Laura. If you're watching this, it means you found the diary again. I've always admired how you don't give up, but you should know, there was never just one of me. I'm the part they couldn't erase." The figure leaned forward, and for the first time, his face came into light. It wasn't Andrew Donovan. It wasn't Mark Hawthorne. It was Mendoza. He smiled faintly into the lens. "Don't look for me. You won't find me this time." The video ended with the faint sound of typing, and then the same 4 words that had haunted every stage of the case. "The diary won't save you." 2 months later, Laura Keating left the force. Her official statement cited psychological exhaustion, but those close to her knew the truth. She'd become obsessed with the idea that Mendoza was still alive, that he'd used the investigation to erase his past and assume another life, just as Andrew Donovan had before him. Sometimes neighbors would see her parked in her car for hours outside the station, staring at the front doors. And on her desk at home, beneath a flickering desk lamp, the red leather diary still sat open to the last page. Under Rachel's final words, someone had written a new message in fresh ink. End of file. Until next time. They thought it ended with Rachel Hawthorne. They thought they buried the truth. But the real story is still out there, writing itself. If you thought this case was over, you're wrong. Hit subscribe before the next one disappears.